Hey everybody, welcome to The Dose. My name is Brian. I hope you had an amazing, incredible weekend. You know, the Byrds had a song in the 60s that was written actually in the late 50s that was adapted entirely from the book of Ecclesiastes that came out of the Bible. It's called There Is a Season. And you guys probably remember the song, right? To everything turn, 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 right? And it talks about there is a season, there is a time to live, there is a time to die, there is a time to laugh and a time to cry. And I believe that our lives have seasons as well. Now, Jim Rohn does an amazing training on the seasons being an adaptation of, we all go through winters and there's summers and there's springs, but I'm talking about seasons as it relates to different periods in our lives. And what I mean by this is that, some folks I think get burned out because they go after the same thing in the same way time and day after day and hour after hour, week after week and month after month, and they just churn and churn and churn and churn and churn and churn and churn. And they get burned out. And they get drained and their enthusiasm becomes ripped, they become robbed of their enthusiasm because they've just been going after the same thing in the same way for so long. Or somebody finds themselves in the same job and they've been there for 40 years and they've been doing the same thing. It's like Groundhog Day. You begin to feel like your life is just wasting away from you. Haven't you ever felt like your life is just wasting away? Well, I think the answer to that is for us to recognize that there should be seasons within our life. Like, for example, when I was a young man, before I was married and before I had children, I was in a season, if you will, of kind of random living. In other words, I wasn't too worried about structure. I had a career that I had begun, and I was in a job, and I went to that job every day. But other than that, man, I didn't really have a plan. I might be playing softball on Tuesday night. I might be going to the club on Thursday night. Friday, who knows? Saturday, I might just sit around all day and do nothing. Sunday, I might do chores or I might not. I don't know. It didn't matter. Life was just kind of random and chaotic, and I enjoyed it that way. It was a season of loose and free living, if you will, right? Now that I'm in my late 30s, for at least a few more weeks, right? I can say that, my life is much, much more structured. And I'm in a season right now of very focused application and effort in the achievement of very certain goals. And my life is very regimented. My schedule is very tight. Everything is, one right after the next, right after the next. And I like to think that the next decade, when I'm in my 40s, will be a season of harvest of sorts, right? That I'll be able to experience the fruits of the labors from the last 10 years. And then the next season might be a season of regrouping, maybe, or starting something new. In other words, maybe in my 50s I'll get inspired to start speaking or authoring or doing something else. And who knows where life may take us. But I think we need to embrace the concept that there's periods in our lives that should be seasons, and we should treat them that way. So if you're in a season of grinding away, going after hardcore after some goals, well, that's fantastic. But there should also be seasons of where your primary focus is family, or your primary focus is your parents or your children. And there should be seasons where your primary focus is your health, and maybe those seasons are 6 months long or 2 years long or a decade long. I don't know. It's up to you. The point is simply this: to recognize that you and I, we don't have the energy to go after everything we want in our lives 100% in all these different categories all of the time. It's like being an octopus on roller skates, right? Lots of activity, but no direction. Instead, if we look at our life as seasons, we can apply ourselves in focus here for a period of time on one simple aspect of our life, and then we can change our focus and apply our focus wholeheartedly to another area of our life for another season of time. Again, whether that's 2 weeks or 2 years. And I believe that if we are supremely focused on one thing or another for brief periods of time, brief meaning a couple of months or a couple of years or a couple of weeks, that we can accomplish so much more in those short expanses of time because of the intense focus than we could over the course of a lifetime if our focus was spread out all over the place. So recognize what season of your life you're in. Focus your energy there. Get the job accomplished. Accomplish massive things during that season, that natural timing in your life where that makes sense. And then shift your focus and move it in a different direction and accomplish something major there, and then move on to the next thing and on to the next thing and on to the next thing. And in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, you'll find that you've accomplished all of these magnificent things instead of getting through the next 10 or 20 or 30 years and realizing that you are exhausted because you were pursuing them all and mastered none. And that's the dose, guys. Go make it a great week.